Hi, and welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where two people who organize their lives with open browser tabs and post-it notes come together to read history stories together that we've only recently learned. We're hoping the hell the other one has never heard it before. I'm host one, I'm Theresa, and that.
I'm Angie, and I'm hoping one day we come together to tell the same story on accident.
And this is why I keep telling stories that feel like they're just completely out of left field.
That's what makes it fun. I'm here for it. I think you go first today, yeah?
No, no,
Is
I
it really
don't.
me?
I literally went first last time when I told you a story of Molly Williams.
Hot dog.
I
I,
know.
this is gonna sound so dumb, but I just don't believe you.
You can look it up. I'll sit here.
Look
I'm
at
just
that.
going to keep
Yeah,
doing my
no,
needlework.
you were right.
Yeah, it's not
Okay,
like
well,
my screen is open with the thing,
the
so
thing
I
up or
I I
anything.
couldn't get railroaded into going first.
I can't gaslight you into this one.
No, not this time.
Dang it. Okay, well, Uh, okay. All right. Sorry, I just blanked there for a second.
You were just so
All right.
convinced you were going second that
I
you
was. I was so prepared to go second. I'm not prepared to go first. Okay, switching gears.
she will be indulged.
Indeed. All right. I think I think I'm gonna pronounce everything in my story right. Um, please bear with me if I don't. And if you know how to pronounce the word, please share it with me because there's one that I'm a little like, oh, I'm gonna
Oh,
work
I'm
on that
so
one.
excited. I'm so excited because every time I hear you say the word Thames, like the Thames River, I'm
Hmm
always like, are you saying it right?
I,
It feels wrong.
it looks wrong, it sounds wrong, but I don't want to say times either, although I feel like that's closer to right.
And I think I just need to isolate every time you say that word, string it together, and realize that you say it differently every single
Every
time.
time, because yes, I do, because here's the deal. I think I'm just going on vibes alone with that word. Like, there's like a handful of words. I was actually just having this conversation with somebody recently where it's like, like when you read a fantasy novel and then you hear it for the first time and you're like, that is not the character's
No,
name.
no. Like
Absolutely
I
not.
really don't even try to say their names. I just go, "Oh, that is the look and feel of the main male character."
Yeah, because are we sure? Like, that's a letter that's not normally in this word, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, it's vibes. It's vibes alone. Okay, that's what we're working with. So, my first source is a history hit article by Sarah Roller from November of 2020. It is about the Sensoji Temple.
Okay.
Um, there is a facts.net, which I'm going to be honest, seems a little sketchy. However, my story is so short and it's a banger that I will take the sketchy sources because they at least had something to run with. Called 35 Facts About the Nakizumo Festival. Please tell me you are not familiar with this.
Where is it?
So it takes place all over Japan, but the biggest one, like the one where it sort of started, is at the Sensoji Temple in Tokyo.
Maybe. I off the top, it's not ringing bells, but
Oh, I'm so excited to tell you this story
is
then.
this
Okay,
going to be the penis festival?
there's actually no penises involved or syphilis in this story.
We
Sorry,
haven't
Ryan.
talked about syphilis in so long.
I know. We're gonna have to bring it up again. So sorry, Ryan, we let you down. Um, in your time in Japan, did you ever visit this temple? Where did you ever get like the touristy tour of the area?
I mean, I would bum around all over Tokyo all the time. So if
Okay,
it's
so
the one in near Harajuku Park, yeah.
okay. So, my understanding is that this Sensoji temple is the oldest temple, like the oldest Buddhist temple in Tokyo. And this is the name I'm gonna need some help with. It is dedicated to Canon Bost They are the Bodhisattva of compassion or mercy. Um, According to the History Hit article, it is the world's most visited spiritual site, which I thought was wild when you consider the wall in Jerusalem, where on like one side you have the Wailing Wall, and then on the other side you have Mecca.
Mm.
So it's like, oh, I'm gonna have to do some numbers here on this one.
Wait, the other
Um,
city of Mecca, isn't Mecca in Mecca?
well, like yeah, Mecca is in Mecca, right? But like when you think about Jerusalem as a whole, not so much Mecca being Mecca, but like when you think about Jerusalem, you have one half that's like that cares for the Jewish community, and you have one half that cares for the Muslim community, and they all sort of merge in this holy place that's sacred to three religions, right?
Right.
Like so yeah, Mecca is in Mecca, Jerusalem, the Wailing Wall is in Jerusalem. But anyway, I would have thought one of those two places would have been the most visited spiritual site in the world. But apparently it's this one, and that's pretty cool. It was built in 645 AD, which I think is freaking fantabulous that we actually know the date. Um, the story goes that two fishermen they pull a statue out of the Sumidagawa River in the early morning of March 18th of 628 AD. Like, I love Japanese note taking. We have the
No,
date.
they're really good. They like writing things down.
I love that for us.
Hmm.
Like, if this story would have come from the Western world, we would have been like, we kind of think it happened about 1,000 years ago. Unclear?
No, 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 no. I mean, okay,
Like,
case in
maybe?
point, if Hubs was in the room, he would interject and say, according to the one of the free genealogy apps that I used in just doing things, at some point in the 10th century, my lineage peters out and ends with Scamander the river god.
See? Great note taking.
Yeah.
I'm still here for your deity of an ancestor, Scamander the River God. I, your family lore is top notch.
I do what I can.
You know, it explains a lot actually when you say that and you think about like the story of how we got here. Your
Amen.
chaos goodness explains a lot. So these two fishermen, they pull this statue out of the river. It's to represent this deity, and then so then a temple gets built around it, right? Okay, so that image, that statue is not on display today, but it did stand in the same place since the temple's construction in 645 AD, 4 centuries.
Oh,
So
and
fast forward.
when you walk
Go ahead.
in to these temples, they have massive statues on the sides.
That's
So,
sort of what I expected.
yeah.
I was thinking of Fuho's statue and how big it was, and it was just her like mausoleum. So I can only
Hmm.
imagine what a deity's statue would be like, you know? We're gonna fast forward a bit to the 12th century. The shoguns begin showing like big devotion to this temple, and then other prominent people they start to follow suit, and sensoji just becomes more and more important to the people of Japan. In 1590, quote, the first Tokugawa shogun Nisei designated Sensoji as the temple where prayers of the shogunate would be offered, and his successors would do the same, and this leads to this continued popularity during this era. Like, it just gets bigger and bigger and more loved over time. Well, much of Tokyo is destroyed during the Second World War, so the current temple that we can go see today it actually dates from 1958. But the author of the article that I was reading says that Japanese culture places less emphasis on the use of entirely original materials and much more on the idea of replacing and restoration using traditional craftsmanship and materials. And I just think that's really special because when you think about, like, I've been in more than one social media conversation with somebody who was so ticked off that somebody remodeled the house of the Victorian era and they made it modern. And like on the one hand, you need to keep some of its original charm, but on the other hand, it's a living testament to the family that lives there.
Right.
So the idea of using these traditional craftsmanship trades and the traditional materials speaks to that, but also represents the generation that's doing it. And I
Like,
think that's really cool.
kind of akin. My in-laws, they have a little 1950s bungalow and they're trying to, get it all. Many of the things period correct. These were the types
Right.
of, hinges we would have had. These are the types of things we would have had. This is how the kitchen would have laid out. But they have a modern HVAC,
Yes. Yep.
you know?
Why not? I got in a conversation with someone once about a house that was probably built in 1900, and the new owners completely and lovingly remodeled this home, but they painted the exterior black and then added a modern deck with like the glass railing, so you
Hmm.
can still see through it. This house was stunning, and people were attacking this restorer because how dare you take its original charm? And I was sitting there thinking, like, it's gorgeous. I feel like if a Victorian person would have seen this house, they would have been like, I'll take it. It's painted black.
But
It's
that's the
perfect.
thing. You can't be everybody's cup of tea, right?
No, and it's your house.
Yeah, I'm not
Do
gonna
with it what you
like
will.
put a survey out among the community at large. Hey, I'm gonna change the color of my front door way in.
Yeah. I'm considering
No.
painting the bathroom pink. Do you think that would be acceptable to your generational ideas? Anyway, for whatever reason, about 400 years ago, a new festival breaks out, and that's why I'm here today.
Okay.
So, every year from at least late April to early May, this time represents the end of the Golden Week holiday. I'm not real familiar with that, but it
Yep.
sounds like a
The
really fun time.
the entire country goes on spring break. And
Oh.
like there's no work, there's no school. Like I mean, I say there's no work. Like I didn't work. None of the schools were operational. Like I worked at like a commercial school, right?
Mhm.
But none of the public educational schools were open either. Many companies take the week off. That sounds great, but what that means is that's your week of vacation for that period of, the quarter. And since everybody's on spring break, travel rates are so much higher.
And you're probably like, are there like restaurants and things, are they serving or?
Yeah, most of them. Yeah, like so a lot
Oh,
of the
okay.
service industries are still operational, but it's just everything is so expensive and crowded.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so this festival takes place towards the end of that, and it often coincides with Children's Day.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yep.
So at shrines all over Japan, a Shinto priest opens each festival with rituals and prayer, and then two sumo wrestlers enter the ring, or what I just learned today as the doyo. The involvement of the sumos is both symbolic and practical. They are seen as protectors and will bless their young companions because entering the ring safe in the arms of the sumo wrestlers are babies.
I don't think I've witnessed this.
The goal is make the baby cry. The rules of the competition are simple. The first baby to cry wins. If both babies cry at the same time, the baby with the louder cry wins. Okay? So,
Okay.
these wrestlers, they're snuggling up to their babies. They're safe and sound in their arms. In fact, this quote, it's kind of my favorite part. Despite their intimidating appearance, sumo wrestlers handle the babies with great care and tenderness. Then, either the referee or the wrestlers themselves, I think it depends on where, like what festival you go to as to who does what, but they begin to try to make the babies cry. And they start by saying, Naki, 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 which I just means cry, cry, cry. They'll employ making faces and like jostling them about gently. And if that doesn't work, someone will don an Oni mask in hopes that that will work.
Oh yeah, that also happens at New Year's.
I suspected
Yeah.
that probably happens more than once a year.
Yeah.
I spent several hours of my life trying to determine why we would decide that making babies cry is festival worthy because I feel like as a culture and globally, we spend so much more time trying to make them to stop crying. Well, There is a cultural belief that babies who have a big sturdy cry they'll grow up to be strong and healthy. In fact, in Japan, there is a proverb, and I hope I say this right, that says "naku ko wa soru tatsu," which translates to "crying babies grow fat." There is additionally a belief that crying babies are also believed to ward off evil spirits, so big cry means big blessings. But if you don't cry, if you're the baby, obviously, and you don't cry, and perhaps you fall asleep in the sumo's arms, that means you are already seen as sturdy and blessed. So, like, you're having a good day either way.
Okay.
Um, Festivals, they feature ceremonies such as prayers for the baby's well-being. Some include Nakizumo bouts, and the baby's first, quote, sumo stance are held. In
That's
some
adorable.
places, right? In some places, parents are also allowed to participate in the events. Some will beat drums for their babies to encourage growth, and they'll receive celebratory handprints. Can you explain the handprints to me? Because all I can see is getting the Orcai hand from Lord of the Rings.
I'm,
And I think that's not it.
yeah, I don't know what you're trying to communicate, so I can't elaborate on. Because also remember, I said I don't think I've gone to this. Probably because at the time
I
I was
didn't.
like young 20s, and I was like, yeah, I don't need to go to a baby thing.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if the celebratory handprints is like a cultural blessing, like, when you go to Catholic priests and you get the holy water on your forehead sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable in speaking on it because I don't know.
No worries. I was just curious. I'm gonna follow up in my questions on that later. The festival is so popular that parents travel all over Japan, and in some places, the children are like at Sensoji, it's such a popular festival that the parents pay to enter the competition, and the children are chosen by lottery. They will wear traditional outfits or sumo aprons. And if you care, I have some really sweet pictures.
You
I
say
know that
aprons,
sounds.
and I know it's just a long, long belt that wraps very creatively around all of the bits.
No, let me see if I can find you one of the pictures. Okay, fantastic. I will share my screen because I just cannot get over how cute these are. Did it? Okay, I think it loaded. So,
Okay,
do you
so we
see it?
are
Okay.
seeing a sumo wrestler. He is holding I would say 4 to 6 month old who
Yeah.
is got little blue socks on, sucking his thumb, darling
Yep.
little.
Right now, oftentimes, so my understanding is the one like pretty continual thing across the festivals is it's anywhere ranging from like infant to 1 years old. Like you have to be under one to participate.
Okay.
Um, the,
Got to say,
here's them
please, here's
meeting.
my 16-year-old baby.
I know, right? Here's them meeting at the beginning of the match. So we have the two sumo wrestlers with the referee standing between them.
Yep, and they're both holding infants.
Mm-hmm. I love this one. The sumo wrestler on our left looks like he is having the time of his life. And this is the traditional apron that they're mentioning in the.
Oh, okay.
Hmm. A lot of the children are dressed up in traditional Japanese cultural garb. And in some places, they also do things like baby racing, like a crawl race. And when I was telling my husband this story, he said, "You just know that there's a bookie involved in this." And I bet you there's like generational like legends, like, "Oh, I won the sumo baby contest, so you have to win too," sort of thing. And I've been laughing nonstop for over a week because I just wanted to share this so bad, and I am so glad that you gave me the ability to do so. So that's the Japanese festival of making babies cry.
That is hilarious. And it feels hilarious to me that I didn't know a single thing about it.
I was literally like, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please don't know, please don't know, please don't know the whole time. because I think I would have been genuinely upset if you would have been like, actually, let me tell this whole story.
I mean, okay, so here's the thing. I had spent the night drinking in Tokyo.
As it turned out, I stumbled
I
into
mean,
one.
yeah.
What you
So
don't know.
here I am, completely hungover, and these babies are wailing.
And I've got a toot about it.
All right, so I do have a story for you, and surprisingly, there is a theme.
Oh, I love this for me. Is it crying
Um,
babies or sumo wrestlers?
Neither.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to tell you the story of Richard Sakakida.
Okay. I can't say I know the name.
You won't. Okay,
Okay.
my sources are the Intelligence Knowledge Network of the Army, Lieutenant Colonel Richard M. Sakakiro, U.S. Army, U.S. Air Force, retired.
Okay.
America's Secret Army by Ian Sawyer and Douglas Botting, as shared in the Congressional Record, July 3rd or January 30th, 1996, and the book America Sutra by Duncan Ryukin Williams.
Oh, that's a name.
Mhm. All right, are you
All
ready?
right. I am so ready. At some point, I'm hoping to get to yell, "Oh no, I know this guy's name!"
No, you
Just
won't.
to
You
be a jerk.
really won't. I honestly like, yeah, there's um Richard Sakakida, he's born November 19th in the year 1920 in Maui.
Okay. Big
His
fan. Already a big fan.
Right, so things are looking great. His parents had immigrated from Hiroshima in around 1900.
Okay.
Now, most Americans would describe him as Japanese American, but the Japanese had a very special word for expatriates like him. He's Nisei, which meant that he's literally translates to like second generation, but it just means the firstborn abroad.
Okay.
So the
Okay, that
first
makes
that
sense.
leave is Issei, the second or the firstborn is Nisei, and goes on from there.
Okay.
Um, he graduated from McKinley High School and Hongwaji Japanese Language School in 1939. So he's an American citizen in a Japanese family. So this gives him a very unique position as being a man of two cultures and two very different languages.
Yeah, let me tell you. I don't
You
even want to
had,
get into language right now, but I feel like Japanese makes way more sense than English or Spanish.
let me know which class you're taking. I can almost guarantee you're not talking about, you're having complaints against Spanish because that's what you're taking. But
All
anyhow,
right.
it's
Serious complaints.
it's 9 months before the attack on Pearl Harbor. And there is another Nisei named Arthur Komori, and they're both sworn in to the Counterintelligence Corps as agents in Hawaii with the rank of sergeant. They were the first Japanese Americans to ever be recruited into the CIC, and they're among the handful of their detachment that will end up surviving the war against Japan.
Okay, that's not
So,
heavy at all.
little foreshadowing there. Now,
Wait, there's a war?
yeah, well, yeah, so America hadn't entered in yet. We
Just
were
selling
playing
arms.
it cool and claiming to be neutral with a very American accent.
We sounded like Texas.
Yes.
Got it.
Uh-huh. So they end up just basically getting intensive training courses in codes, ciphers, and recognition of prime targets, but they had been given no formal intelligence training.
That seems not helpful.
I mean, it depends on what you're going to do. So they're prepared to embark on this secret mission, the nature of which they're told it's going to come to them later. We'll tell you later. It's a need to
Oh, you
know. Right
just
now, you
need
don't
to
need to
know.
know.
Okay. Got it. I'm great
Now,
with those.
they're told their destination is Manila, the capital city of the Philippines, and they're warned that their assignment would certainly be the source of inconvenience and probable danger,
Love
and
this.
they're to say nothing except or to their immediate families. And in Sakakida's case, it's just his widowed mom.
Okay.
So, April 7th, 1941, Sergeant Sakakida and Arthur Kumori leave for Manila. They're disguised as civilians, and Sakakida quickly makes connections with many key Japanese businessmen. Now, in Manila, they're met by the commanding officer of the CIC department in the Philippines, and they're briefed for the first time about the nature of their mission. And this is kind of where the magnitude of what they're supposed to do, because they're fresh high school graduates. These are young boys. Like,
Yeah, you know what? In my mind, you told me he graduated from high school and I saw him as 40.
you say that, but in one of the books that I read about on him, his mom signed his enlistment paperwork because I guess he wasn't 18 yet, but because didn't know how to write in English, she just signed her name in an X.
Okay.
And so I think she was fully aware of what was happening. That I got that impression, but it was still like, there
Yeah,
is that language barrier. Um,
right.
so they get there, they realize what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to counterintelligence investigations on the entire Japanese community in Manila, which is about 2,000 people.
And they're only sending them two guys to do this?
Yes.
I feel like
So
that's not enough.
they have to just embed as deep as possible and really try to figure out who is a threat to national security and get that intel out. Now,
Okay.
their cover story is that they claim they're crew members of a freighter that had jumped ship after a tiring life at sea. Now, Kumori, he enhances the story by adding that he's also a draft dodger, and given the state of affairs, this really made him get along real nice and tight with the pro-emperor sons of Japan.
Love this. Okay, this
Because,
works.
yeah, they're like, heck yeah, brother. Now, Sakakida, he's instructed to register at the small hotel called the Nishikawa, and Kumori checks into the Toyo Hotel. Both of these are very Japanese names. They have their case officers that they're in contact with, Major Raymond and Agent Greenfeld D. Driscoll, and they're the only two members of the CIC department.
Speaking of Texas,
Yeah, doesn't that just Driscoll? Like
yeah, the whole
he's
thing did.
he's got a drawl. That
And a
man could
huge hat.
he spit tobacco once or twice.
Yeah, at least once.
Now, it's Driscoll and Raymond who are the only ones that know that they're Nisei agents. And in order to stay in contact, they're given keys to a mailbox in the central post office in Manila under the name Sixto Borgia, which sounds
Okay.
so spy-like. It's not John Smith.
Borgia seems a unique name to go with here.
In Manila, yeah, that's a choice. Um,
Yeah, bold, I'll say.
They're told to check the box twice daily for instructions about rendezvous places. Raymond and Driscoll would then pick them up at prearranged spots and then drive them to a roundabout route to the military intelligence station in Fort Santiago, where they would submit their report in safety and review new briefings. For Raymond Major, a longtime agent, Sakakida and Kumori developed tremendous admiration and affection. Quote, he gradually instilled in us techniques from subtle investigations and subterfuges and the best traditions of the CIC, Kumori recalled later. Yeah, later, because these kids had had less than a month of training involving boot camp before they're sent to Manila.
But typical boot camp is 6 to 8 weeks.
These are things.
Okay, carry on then.
So basically, everything that they were able to learn from him would help them later on. Now, in the months preceding the outbreak of war against the US and Japan, because war is indeed
On the
happening.
horizon.
Well, it is active in specific theaters. I don't think in Asia yet.
Okay.
Um, the two young and apprehensive Nisei began the delicate task of burrowing into the warren of the main Japanese community in the Philippines. Sakakira, he poses as a sales representative of Sears Roebuck, and he ended up having learned the sales brochures by heart and spent his evenings in the Japanese club where he assiduously ingratiated himself with the Japanese businessmen who frequented the hotbed of Nippon orthodoxy. Now, the
Wow.
the same source is the one who said that they're ship jumpers and then said that he is a Sears Roebuck salesman. I'm confused by that because I
You
don't
know, you
think
have
you
to
would.
tell a different story for each group, right?
I assume that's how you're found out.
I would think, but in this case, maybe like this is what we just said to get into the community, and now we're dealing with like higher ups or the different people that we need to actually be dealing with. So this is our story.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
Okay.
I was originally a Sears and Roebuck's guy, and then got on the ship, and then I jumped the ship.
Possibly. I'll have to dig deeper. So, as all this is going on, Sakakida, he finds employment as a clerk at the Nishikawa Hotel, and he's doing it. He's getting room and board out of the deal. But the job itself is an incredible opportunity because he gets to inspect the passports and credentials of the Japanese visitors coming to Manila.
Nice.
It's just
Yeah, he was thinking through that one.
Yeah. So with the coming war, he ends up getting a ton of information and it takes up some momentum. Now, the US has required all Japanese nationals to file declarations of their bank accounts and assets. Many of them come to see Sakakira to get his help in filling out these forms. And in this way, he's able to interview a considerable portion of the community in the Philippine capital and obtain gobs of info about what did or didn't go on the forms. And then he's also learning about the particular or about the military background of these people. And all of this
Right.
gets passed on to military intelligence.
Genius move on his part.
Oh, it's just like, well done.
Yeah. I want
Um,
you on my team.
yeah. For an 18-year-old boy, he ain't doing too bad.
No, he knows what's up.
Now, he, of course, fails to tell anybody he's an American citizen.
Oh, right. Okay.
And since everybody who looks at him and kind of talks to them, to him or to them, he's completely Japanese. And he's treated
Right.
such by the hostile Filipino company or community.
Okay, this makes sense.
And
And he's just kind of putting up with it because we need this cover.
right.
Yeah, okay.
So after a bit of time, he ends up finding himself in physical danger and he has to start to kind of look out for his own survival. Then that's about the time that the Manila radio station announces that all aliens should report to their local police station for internment.
Hmm.
Now, this is at
For
this
your
point,
safety, of course.
yeah, and Manila was, I think at this point, it was technically protected, owned, cared for by the Americans. But for him
Hmm.
to hold this pretense of being Japanese, he decides that he's going to be happy to oblige. So, him, along with three other Japanese, go and they're flung in the back of an open police trunk and driven through the narrow streets of Manila, where crowds of angry anti Japanese Filipinos aimed blows and missiles at them so that they were bruised, bloody, and exhausted by the time that they reached the sanctuary of the Japanese Club, which was now an internment center for the Japanese, German, and Italian aliens.
Okay. Didn't see any of those words coming in that order.
No, I didn't realize that there would be Germans or Italians in Manila.
I mean, for like business, that makes sense, but not for any other reason. So it's weird that they would end up like there would be enough of them to put them in a
Right.
internment and then notate them.
Yeah, like I like there's literally only Hans. Like, why say
Right.
Germans? It's just Hans.
It's one. It's one. His name is Hans.
Yeah.
And now all I can think of is Big Winter Blowout.
Wrong nationality,
Oh,
but yes, I'm here for it.
yeah. Well, I don't know. The minute you said that, that was the face that I got, and I was like, I know he actually probably Swedish, but whatever. Like,
Norwegian, I believe. I believe Norwegian.
I thought that story took. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's
Okay,
irrelevant.
you're
Carry
right.
on.
We're getting sidetracked. Now, a few days later, he gets sent into Manila City to obtain food for the children in the center. And while he's there, he takes this opportunity to return to his hotel, pack up his belongings, and he's barely there to pack his bags when three Filipino Secret Service agents blow in and they arrest him on suspicion of being a Japanese spy because he was
Oh, that's
so good at his
inconvenient.
cover. And they throw him into the Bilibid prison, where, like his fellow agent Kumori, he languished in hope of rescue by his CIC commander, Major Raymond, who is in town and who should have the capacity to come in and swoop him up.
Why am I getting the vibe that he does not?
Well, just maintain. Um,
Oh, I'll wait.
yeah, just, hold that thought. So everything is going fantastically bad. And it's at this point that the first phase of the plans of the military conquest of the Far East, the Japanese have launched a simultaneous assault on Hong Kong, Malaya, and the Philippines. So this is on the same day of the attack on Pearl Harbor. Over half of the bombers of the American Air Force in the Far Eastern Theater and a third of the fighters were destroyed in Japanese air attacks on Japanese or on American air bases like Clark Field in the Philippines and the naval base in Manila Bay. They're just wiped off the map.
Okay.
And I literally only heard about Pearl Harbor. I didn't realize that this was a concerted effort.
It is interesting that when we are taught Pearl Harbor and when we think about Harbor, all we think is
Pearl
Pearl
Harbor,
Harbor.
and not that
Yeah.
it was just one of the louder.
Yeah. That is wild. You'd think they would have told everybody the whole thing.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it just wasn't as exciting to be bombed on American soil,
Yeah. I mean
you
that
know?
that's definitely yeah. Okay.
But basically they have no naval support or air support. And the commander of the Filipino and American forces in the Philippines, General Douglas MacArthur, whom we've heard about, we'll hear about a lot more in this story, he had no real prospect of holding Manila. He's like, look, this is a foregone conclusion. We rolled a nat two.
Or toast. I
Yeah.
believe as my son says, you're cooked.
Mm, yes. So this is not good. Um, the Japanese begin landing ground forces. And that's when MacArthur orders withdrawal southward to the natural stronghold of the Bataan Peninsula and the island fortress of Corregidor. And that's where he would hold out as best as he could till relief from Hawaii would arrive. And that might take up to 6 months' time.
Oh.
So, doo 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 doo.
Do 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 do
Yep.
do do.
Meanwhile, Sakakida and Komori, they get swept up in the turmoil of those desperate days as, before the Japanese really enter into Manila. And that's where events start to really move swiftly. First, they get snatched up by the prison by Agent Driscoll. So, yay. Then on Christmas Eve, they're bundled onto a tiny steamer bound for Bataan. Cool beans. Then they get secreted to Corregidor, that tiny overgrown island fortress on the very tip. It's known as the Rock.
Oh, welcome to the Rock.
Yep. And MacArthur has established his headquarters there after his retreat. And here, Sakakida was assigned as General MacArthur's personal interpreter and translator.
Okay,
So
that's kind of a thing.
there's a lot of Japanese speaking going on. There's a lot of documents to process, and the general's going to need somebody. And he's only got two options.
I'll take them.
Now, there's such a desperate general need for Japanese linguists that both Sakakira and Kumori were sent to work near the front lines in Bataan in alternating 3-day shifts so that one was on the Rock and the other would be in Bataan until they changed places,
Oh, okay.
which makes sense. Um, Once he gets summoned back to Army headquarters to broadcast a surrender appeal in Japanese to diehard Japanese troops fighting in this last-ditch battle, they're on the Japanese have entrenched themselves and they basically get him to really call out and be like, hey, in perfect Japanese, very formal, very flowery language, like, we would love it if you would surrender. If you do, we will be very kind. I had it in my notes, but I took it out because I was trying to streamline things. And that's when a Japanese voice in English says, why aren't you shooting? Did you idiots run out of ammo?
I was not prepared.
You're welcome. I'll wait for you to get further into your glass before I say it to really try to see if I can get you to do a spit take. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so they respond with fire, and Sakakida
As you do.
realizes that this isn't going well for him. Now, he's not popular with the American and Filipino frontline troops because they realize that wherever he goes, he gets a lot of fire from the enraged Japanese people.
Oh, okay.
They're like, "Would you go away? You are just a magnet for bullets, and we want to go home."
Off with you now.
Yep. So this next sentence I feel goes without saying. The Rock was not a nice place to be.
What?
It's now raked daily from dusk to dawn by Japanese air and artillery bombardment, so that the garrison is forced to seek permanent shelter in the tunnel system that bore deep into the hills.
Hmm. So it doesn't smell good either.
New, and they're existing on half rations.
Ew. Okay.
And under this hail of Japanese high explosives, the two Nisei work 16 to 20-hour days helping to decipher Japanese signal codes and monitoring Japanese Air Force communications.
Whew, that's a long day.
Yeah, it is. And I can only imagine that full rations and sleep would be helpful,
I mean, typically.
right? Now, as all this is going on, they're able to translate and warn American targets on the island when raids are coming because they're monitoring all the channels. They later get joined by another Hawaiian-born Nisei named Clarence Yamagata, and he's a civilian who practiced law in Manila, and he'd acted as a part-time legal advisor to the Japanese consulate until the American withdrawal from the city. So now there's three Japanese men, all huddled up for this. By now it's the beginning of April, so it's about a year that they've been in Manila, and it's clear that the end is really on the horizon. After 3 months of bitter and intensive combat, malnutrition and disease, the men are exhausted. By now, their average daily food intake is down to about 800 calories per man. And
That is
nine,
insane.
isn't it?
They had to weigh, what, 100 pounds?
You would think. And here's another line that's awful. 90% of the Filipino army had no shoes.
What?
I don't know what
Like,
happened to their shoes, but they wore through them, they ate them. I don't know. You tell me.
any number of things.
Right.
You would think, though, that in a case like this, arming your army with, accoutrement like
Shoes would probably be preferable because
shoes and bullets
they
would be
march.
helpful. Yeah.
So there's that. And hope of relief had faded, and most are resigned to the prospect of imminent surrender to this overwhelming enemy. There's few now who could escape the tragic fate that's about to take them. What they don't realize is the Bataan Death March is coming.
Okay.
Um,
Allow me to collect my eyebrows from the top of my head.
you're welcome. I'll give you a second for that. And that's when 76,000 shattered American and Filipino survivors were led north into captivity on a notorious death march that kills over half of their number. And many of Sakakida's CIC comrades were a part of this march.
Hmm.
Sakakida, he ends up, I think, I can't remember. I couldn't figure out if he was a part of a different march or in that march as well, but he does
Gotcha.
survive that. Um, Now, General MacArthur, he expresses some deep concern over Kumori and Sakakida because the Japanese refuse to recognize the right of anyone of Japanese blood to bear loyalty to another country.
That's so interesting.
Hmm. So they're doubtless going to treat these two Nisei with greater harshness in captivity than they would the Caucasian comrades, especially if they discovered that the Nisei in question were undercover agents from the American military intelligence community.
Of course. But they weren't, of course.
Oh, they weren't. Not I. Now,
Not I. I don't. What is America?
yeah, they just eat hamburgers. I don't
Never heard
subscribe.
of it.
I like
I,
rice
I don't. I don't even know
and
what a hamburger
fish.
is.
Yeah.
So much fish.
Oh, I love fish, so I'm here for it. But because of this, General MacArthur orders Kumori and Sakakita to leave the Philippines. He's got this kind of makeshift evacuation flotilla known as what is he refers to as the Bamboo Fleet. And this presented Sakakita with the most difficult and monumentous decision of his life. And it marked his transition from an agent of ability to a man of heroic stature and a master spy.
Okay,
You
let's
ready for
go.
that? Because if
Mm-hmm.
if all of this was build up, this is where the
Yeah,
story takes off.
that is insane because at any point I was expecting him to say, and then he got, I don't know, scurvy and
Hold,
went
please.
home and wrote about this. Oh, okay.
It's not scurvy. It's not scurvy.
Oh, it's
Um,
syphilis.
no, I don't have that. I'm
Dang
trying.
it.
I couldn't weave it in. Um, it's still, you gotta think about this. It's still less than a year since he enlisted in the army. He's a kid in many respects. Like his frontal lobe does not fully connect. And the Japanese had taken Bataan, and we got Arthur evacuating the area. Now, Sakakita, he contends that the evacuation plans as they stood involved leaving Yamagata behind to face his prisoner of the Japanese. And to him, this is unbearable because Yamagata had openly occupied a position of trust among the Japanese and then voluntarily come over to the American side.
Okay.
Now, clearly, he's going to be marked for special treatment by his captors. Sakakita is also aware that Yamagata has a wife and child living in Japan, so he's got even more pressure that can be applied to him by the Japanese.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
Sakakita, he's like, I've never worked openly for the Japanese. I don't have a wife or family, so I don't know if that he means children because I was like, your mom's still around. Um, but he felt it was only right that Yamagata should take his place on the ride to freedom. And he takes this proposal, he runs it to his commanding officer, who then forwards it to General Wainwright, who then forwards it to General MacArthur, who agreed. And so,
Okay.
yeah, basically, their checks in place. Um,
Yeah.
Everyone agrees, Sakakita, you're just gonna have to do the best you can with Japanese occupation. Godspeed.
Good luck to you.
Yeah. Uh, when,
Thoughts and prayers.
oh, and yeah. When the American defenders of Corregidor are herded into captivity on the death march. Many are left dead or dying. Some of those who survive the grim ordeal are given to endure a grimmer task in the hands of the Japanese military police, the dreaded Kempe Tai.
Okay, listen, I don't know what Kempe Tai means, but the name alone said with dreaded is it's giving a really big like I'm interested. You got me.
Did you ever see Man in High Castle?
We started it, but I think we only watched maybe the first season or maybe like the first 5 episodes.
Okay,
So I
because
get the gist.
they have the Kempe Tai there, and yeah, that's that I'm drawing on that when I think of this. Anyhow, so Sakakita, he's taken to one of those with whom the Kempetai had took a special interest. He didn't okay, so I guess this is the truth. He didn't take part in the death march, but was kept on Corregidor for 6 months as the only American left on the tragic rock. And he'd
I
originally
think that
come,
would be worse than being on the death march, being the only one left.
yeah, being the literal whipping boy stuck behind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, he'd come to the Japanese military on the very first day of surrender when he'd accompanied General Wainwright to Bataan to act as interpreter for the surrender force. And from that day, his life followed a steep decline into hell. He told the
Mm.
Japanese that he'd been taken by the Americans from an internment camp and made to work for them under duress. But the Japanese didn't believe his cover story and produced several liberated Japanese prisoners of war who testified that Sakakita had worked for the United States Army as an interrogator on a completely voluntary basis. He was,
That is unfortunate.
yeah, that is one of those big bummers where if it had just been Komori who had done all of that, he'd have gotten away scot-free here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's kept on one side of the tunnel system all by his little lonesome. And he's interrogated over a period of several months, and he did not cooperate at all. And the interrogation grew more and more severe.
Cool.
Sakakida is tortured, often severely, and he's burned all over his body with a lighted cigarette.
Torture.
It's literal
Delightful.
torture. In the book American Sutra, they include a quote from him on what he experienced. I did not include it, and you're welcome.
I thank you.
You're welcome. Um, Now, sometimes he gets beaten as well, and other times he's slung with his back over a wooden beam, his feet dangling free from the floor. He gets water pumped into his stomach and then gets jumped on by his guards.
And it doesn't kill him after the first time?
No, no. But
Yeah,
he,
I would have rather taken the death trail.
yeah, yeah, sounds delightful
Mm-hmm.
in this comparison. He said it's his Buddhist upbringing that made him turn inward for inner strength to counter the pain that he believed had already reached an almost unbearable level. Goes on to say, fortunately, my rebelliousness and Buddhist faith held me in good stead.
Good for him, because I'm angry for him.
Right?
Yeah.
Um, so he holds on to his original story and never so much as breathed a hint that he is an agent of enemy intelligence.
I mean, might save his life later.
He endured nearly a year of torture.
Okay. I say
Um,
might save his life later. I'm just gonna be hopeful that we don't end up. Yeah.
Um, they're unable to break the stray, or nope, they're unable to break Sakakida, and the Judge Advocate General of the Japanese 14th Army's headquarters decides to use him as an interpreter because everybody else does. And in the process of doing this, he sneaks food to U.S. prisoners of war.
Gasp.
This guy, he is always doing the most every chance he can. At various times, the Japanese try to trap him into an admission that he was serving as a member in the army. One day, one of them threw a 45 pistol at him and told him to clean it just to see how he handled it. He realizes that if he were to disassemble this weapon properly, it would demonstrate the experience that he clearly has. So he ends up just kind of wiping it with an oily rag and then handing it back.
Ah, weaponized incompetence.
Yeah,
We're such big fans.
we definitely are. Now, he ends up making a daring escape, which I had to include. He ends up connecting with the wife of a guerrilla leader, and when translating for her as she meets his captors, he also does this thing where he forges several documents to help her because the Japanese, while they write everything down, they weren't the best at keeping all of their stuff picked up. So he would just, forge some papers here and there, add a stamp, presto changeo,
You
take
call
this
it
on your
good,
way.
Bob's your uncle.
But okay, so back to his escape plan. Um, it's simple. All it required was him and a small group of guerrillas disguised as Japanese officers to overcome the prison guards and release the inmates. There's three components. The first, that the guerrilla Tupas himself would somehow wrangle himself a job in the prison's electoral department so that at the appropriate moment he'd be in position to short circuit all the electoral facilities in the prison.
Brilliant.
Yep. Okay, second part of this, the guerrillas should keep a meticulous watch so they can determine the precise movements and the timekeeping of the prison guards. Which, yeah,
Also
that's a part of
helpful.
everybody's plan,
Mm-hmm. Should be if it's not.
right? And then the third, that they should somehow get a hold of 5 or 6 Japanese officers' uniform, preferably without knife holes in the backs of the tunics.
Oh, that visual implies it's happened more than once.
Or that if you're going to do it, make sure you just go somewhere else. Just poke them elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
They end up doing just this. And since he's the only ethnic Japanese and linguist in the group, he marches at the head. And as they approach the main gate of the prison, it's him who addresses the soldiers, the guards at the prison's entrance. He barks at these guards with these guttural commands which compelled their confidence and respect. Thinking that the guerrillas were officers from the Japanese garrison, making their nightly security inspection of the prison, which the guards had already established took place at the time they were there, the guards bowed low in respect and looked at firmly at the ground at the feet. And that's when Sakakida and his comrades tapped each one on the back of the head with the butt of their gun.
Love that for him.
It was just so picture perfect. Um,
Truly.
he sneaks back into the prison afterwards and watches the hysteria about the guerrillas escaping. Now,
I'm just it's always easier to get into the prison than out. So he I'm imagining like we got in once, we've left, I'm gonna go back. I just want to watch.
well, okay, so it's more than just because he's there for the show. He really, he is such a patriot that he is sneaking out, continuing to sneak out this vital intelligence that he can get his hands on because they're not keeping it locked up.
But they're just leaving it out willy-nilly.
Yeah. And so he's just like, oh, that and that and that. Okay. Putting that in my, hey, Mrs. Gorilla's wife, what a coincidence. Your husband's not here. Would you take the slip of paper out for me kind of deal?
I mean, that makes sense.
Yep. Now it's early June 1945. He escapes into the mountains, and a week later, he joins up with a small band of guerrillas in the vicinity of Farmshul. I
A
probably said
very
that wrong.
English name.
Yeah, I mean it's farm, Farm, nope, Schol.
I think it's Shoal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's 10 days later, they come under heavy Japanese shelling. And that's when Sakakida gets so badly wounded that he is left behind so that the guerrillas could make a good escape. And it's now that he's on his own. So he has to kind of make it out. He's got tons of shrapnel in his body, which is what made the guerrillas need to leave him. He ends up
Of
cutting it
course.
all out of his body by himself.
Nope, not a chance.
The wounds start to get a little gangrenous, and so he has to find the right herbs, pack his wounds to try to deal with that.
Ew. Okay. Okay. Yeah. It's cool. It's cool. I'm picturing packing like gangrene on your thigh.
Yeah, I don't know where it was. I
Well,
didn't
I'm assuming it was in more than one place.
possibly. Now, he's in the remotest regions of these jungles, and he's having a real rough go because this jungle, while lush, basically there's nothing to eat but grass and wild fruit.
Okay. I mean, is the fruit good fruit? Like, are we getting pineapples or and passion fruit and dragon fruit, or is it like just a variety of one tree?
I mean, I'm just seeing wild fruits. I didn't go. I mean, I'm sure that there's tropical fruits that aren't going to be in our Safeway.
That's weird. But I'm a Californian and we get strawberries year round, so
Yeah, but they're going to have some real interesting looking fruits that you're going to be like, that's a what? And be like, I'll eat
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. I experienced that in Hawaii, like with some of the fruits there that I was like, no, what is this? And then I ate it, and I was like, yeah, I'd eat it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Where it's just
Yeah,
like, it
okay.
looks like it came off of a Halo game.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. I
Yeah.
don't know what it's called, but we ate the one that's quote unquote pudding inside. Like
I,
that's what everybody told us it was like. It was whatever. It wasn't great, but it looked like Halo.
okay.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so he's got some fun tropical cloud bursts because this is now the rainy season and hordes of tropical insects that are just coating his body and making his life miserable.
Hmm.
For
Okay.
months, he endured semi-starvation and the ravages of malaria, dysentery, and beriberi.
What is berry?
Beriberi is, I was like, oh, I kind of know what it is. And so I didn't go further than that. It is a B1 deficiency that can cause a range of neurological and cardiovascular symptoms.
Hmm.
Um, so you have peripheral neuropathy, so think numbness, tingling, um, muscle wasting, foot drop. If it's wet beriberi, you have heart failure, swelling in the legs, shortness of breath. It sounds fabulous, truly.
Sounds like a great day at the spa.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so by this point, his hair and beard had grown long, wild, because it's been months. He has been as unkempt as it can be. He's covered in sores and scratches. His voice has grown weak and feeble. And it said his eyes burned fever bright and his clothes hung in tatters. He's
That's
he's
sad.
looking he's looking great.
Well, and
Um,
he was already so skinny to begin with, so I'm just
because of the lack of
imagining the.
rations, yeah.
Right, yeah. Yeah, okay.
He has no way of knowing what's happened in the outside world. He's got no way to know that the war is over, that there's the Philippines been liberated. He has no clue about the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, oblivious to American landings in Japan and the Japanese surrender to MacArthur on board the battleship Missouri.
Wow. You'd think somebody would try to tell him, but he's on his own, so what are you gonna
Yeah.
do?
He did realize that he didn't see more P-35 American fighter bomber planes coming overhead and dropping napalm. He noticed a lack of that. And there seemed to be a lot of trigger-happy Filipinos around, but he tries to avoid them.
As you do.
Yeah. So by this point, World War II had been over for weeks when Sakakida decided his condition was desperate enough to reach out for help. So he starts finding him close to the Asing River and he starts to follow it downstream. He's hoping it'll take him to sea and then he can kind of figure things out. But he's making some really slow progress and intermittently he would black out. And then one day he sees movement ahead. It's a group of soldiers coming up a hill. And he gets as close as he can without really panicking, because he's trying to be
Hmm.
brave, but it's been rough. And he sees soldiers carrying equipment, and they wore helmets and uniforms, which didn't quite make sense. It said that they seemed strange to him. They're not Japanese. They don't seem to be American. And his first thought is, God, now they've got Germans out here.
Okay. I mean, I wondered when a phrase like that was ever gonna start when we did the Harlem Hellfighters, and the Germans were like, "Oh no, it's them."
Yeah.
Like,
So that's
I yeah, I wondered if at any point the tables were turned.
there were, which is,
Yeah.
he ends up getting closer and within earshot, and he could hear little bits of the conversation, and he realizes, oh my gosh, they are American. And that's when he realizes, oh, I should not come out of appear or out and show myself because I look like a wild man. I look like a Japanese wild man.
And I'm the problem.
Yeah. And so
Yeah. Okay.
eventually he kind of throws caution to the wind and he starts madly waving his arms and yelling loudly, saying, don't shoot. I'm American. Can't you see an American?
Wow.
Now, at first they don't believe him, and it took some time to connect with MacArthur's men to connect the dots because he has his code name, he knows his no like his military numbers, like he can,
Right.
if you have the right people in line, you can back up the provenance of his lineage.
Right. The oh, what's the word? I mean, Providence makes the most sense. I Anyway, delete that. I can't remember the word I was looking for.
I will not. I'm keeping that. But once they're able to connect who he is, he gets this incredible welcome because he is the lone survivor, and they prepare this incredible feast in his honor. There's fried chicken, beer, white bread, fresh butter. Like white bread and fresh butter are the things that cracked me up the most.
Listen, when you're hungry, white bread and fresh butter is delicious.
And having lived on nothing but herbs and grasses for months, this proved too rich for him, and it took him a week to recover from the most memorable binge he's ever had.
On butter and white bread.
Yeah. So
Oh,
he's
you
hos
said that you mentioned beer too, right?
yeah, oh, plenty of beer. I mean,
Okay.
I'd have taken a bath in beer if I were him.
Yeah, that's probably good for the skin or something.
The
Maybe good for the
hair,
hair.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he's hospitalized for a week, and then he's sent to Manila for debriefing. And his story is so extraordinary that he found people needed a lot of convincing that he hadn't been a collaborator with the Japanese, which I get, you know.
Yeah.
But Christmas 1945, he gets sent home to Hawaii for 2 weeks leave. at which time he spent one of those weeks in the hospital with malaria and a high white blood a high white blood white a high
That's a hard
white
one.
blood cell count. Those two words side by side.
High white blood cell. Yeah, you can't say it without being really deliberate.
Yeah. Okay. So after, the week in a hospital in Hawaii and then a week on the beach, he returns back to Manila, which is the last place I'd want to be.
Same.
And it's there he's assigned to the war crime investigation team, locating and identifying the guilty parties that aided the Japanese. Oh, and he's aided by the Japanese predilection for keeping records and diaries.
Oh, I love that we love to keep records.
So when you said that, I was like, I've got a tie-in for you.
Love it when that happens in a roundabout, delightful way.
Yeah. So after the war, okay. During these war crime investigations, he ends up testifying against his captors and he forgives them, offering them cigarettes and candy,
Hmm.
and says that it was his Buddhist faith that gave him the ability to forgive.
Sometimes that's what you need to offer forgiveness so that you can move on too. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
1948, he's transferred to the Office of Strategic Intelligence, the OSI, and the newly established U.S. Air Force as an OSI or OSI officer. And from here, he goes to Japan to help organize all law enforcement agencies' efforts to stop the black market activities in Tokyo. And he retires from the Air Force in 1975 as a lieutenant colonel.
Wow.
He
Wow.
because of the sensitivity of his missions, he did not receive recognition for his dedication and service until 1996.
I was gonna ask you, do we ever hear about him like in the news media sort of thing as far as
Nope.
getting any sort of boon for his lifetime of service?
No, we really don't because that when he's awarded the Purple Heart, it's awarded posthumously.
Hmm. Just checks.
Um, in 1999, he gets the Distinguished Service Medal as another posthumous thing. Um, he died of complications of his injuries of what he received from his torturers on January 23rd, 1996. And it was a week after his death that he received that tribute in Congress, which large portions went to building this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He was inducted into the Military Intelligence Corps Hall of Fame in 1988 while he was alive, and the Air Force Intelligence Hall of Fame in 1999.
Wow. I just, to me, this is gonna sound so weird, but I think it's the best way I can explain it. His life started like that from what we know of, between 17 and 19 years old at the sort of break of World War II, and then we know of him in the 90s, and it's like visually, like we had color photography in the 60s and the 50s, but like we went from black and white TV to cell phones.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and he saw it all. And
yeah,
like he was there, was like secretly holding on to his missions there in his, as you call it, noodle noggin. And like life is just happening around him, but he's literally lived a century of insane backstory.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
yeah. And that's what happens when you go to the library, pick up a couple of books about a different topic, and you catch like a 5-page side story. You go, what? Wait, what?
Excuse me?
I'm gonna need to double click on this.
Yeah, I've done that a time or 100.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that exact same thing happens to me anytime I think about Charlie Two's court. Like, there's
You're
another
all,
one.
oh, I don't have a full family tree mapped out for this human. Allow me a
Wild,
side
but
quest.
yes. Please and thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
My pleasure. I'm glad I got to share them because this man just had such a Looney Tunes breakout and was able to like make it work. It was really fantastic.
Oh, I mean, what is that? Ingenuity, I guess. Like I can handle it. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
But like that is also someone that's not even 2 years older than my own son.
Have fun thinking about that.
Yeah,
That's
I
going to
will.
really mess with you.
It already is. Thank you.
You're welcome. If
As long as I
you,
keep picturing him at 40, I'll be fine.
yeah, if you want to see how I mess with poor, poor Angie next week, rate, review, subscribe, tune back in. And on that note, goodbye.
Teresa has a GoFundMe for my therapy bill.
I didn't start it. I refuse to contribute.
You can just Venmo me.
That's effective.
Whatever.
Bye.
Bye.